Hello, everybody. It's Cheryl Leong from Property Development Australia, and I'm on the road today. As you can tell, I am in a shopping centre, but I thought I'd keep things a little bit interesting for our very first property tech talk. And we decided we'd have this special segment because there's so much, there's so many different platforms that we're seeing now and property technology. We want to be able to have a discussion around the type of technology, the purpose of them, the solutions that they're providing to some of the problems that we're facing as property investors and developers. And hence, I do now have a co-host. So unlike the business of property, I've been doing it fairly solo. But I have a co-host with me today, Subodh Shirodkar. How are you? Come on board.
Hi everybody. Hi Cheryl.
Hello.
Well, hi.
Subodh's coming and beaming in all the way from India. So thank you very, very much. Subodh,
Thank you.
this is our very first inaugural property tech talk. What are we focused on in this series?
Well, I've been part of the Australian Property Development Network, and what I honestly feel is that as a community, it could be an excellent dialogue platform because one, as a community, there is a lot to learn and understand about the technology that drives the real estate industry.
Hmm.
Meet some of the technology leaders, and vice versa. I think we can add a value to the tech and the innovation happening around real estate. So I think it's a great segment to go in, Cheryl, and
Excellent.
both parties as a learning and giving would be an opportunity.
Absolutely. And just to give people a bit of background about your involvement in technology as well, what's your sort of history or journey?
Well, for more than 30 years now, I have been, an IT consultant, IT developer. So my background is very much into technology and business consulting. I do run a tech company since last 10 years. And then apart from that, obviously, I've been a passionate property investor, developer, and therefore this thing was a bit close to my mind that, hey, how can we look at innovation and technology and how can we learn more and perhaps look at what's happening out there.
Yeah, fabulous. Excellent. Well, we have our first guest who is a technology leader and innovator, David Powell, who is going to be talking to us about a new platform that he and I'm sure his friends have been working on called Developer. So, David, please come and join us on the Property Tech Talk dance floor.
Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Subodh.
Hi,
Hello,
David.
hello, and welcome, David. David, you're probably going to introduce yourself better than I will because you have a vast experience in the property and tech space. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a little bit of an eclectic background and a bit of a unicorn, actually, when it comes to the property sector, because I've actually been on all sides of it. The dim, dark past, I was in finance, so funding development, and spent almost 17 years in local government, writing planning schemes, policy, establishing policy, and that sort of thing as chair of planning for one of the largest councils in the country. And I've also been a consultant, operating nationally and internationally with my own firm, and a developer in my own right. So I guess sat on all sides of the table. In addition to that, I've also had a bit of an eclectic background with being CEO of various organisations, law firms, and not-for-profits, that sort of thing. So a bit of a range of experience, but certainly when it comes to property matters, my experience goes back to my 20s.
Mm. Yeah, not long ago. So it's been like I said, a vast sort of spread of experience and knowledge. So David, you've created a platform called Developer. Again, what's that about?
So one of the things that I think is interesting about the property sector, it's one of the key pillars of our economy, but it's also the most inefficient sector in the economy. A lot of what is done in the industry, both on the regulatory side with planning and local government, and with the industry itself, with the developers and financiers, etc., is the same sort of thing they've been doing for decades. And we've had a significant upsurge in property technology over recent years and financial technology. But we're still relying on the traditional sources of information and the traditional method of putting that information together and extrapolating it. So really what a lot of the work that's been done to date is just repackaging information that's already there in various sources. What we have looked to create with Developer is a platform that accesses information that most of the industry doesn't even realize exists. And that's the key to, I think, innovation in the industry, but also managing risk a lot better. And that sort of information sits in both the private sector and government sector.
And so we're talking about information and data. Is that what we're talking? But you know, I know a lot of different providers. Well, I think I know quite a few different providers. What's the problem? What's the problem there? Is the data not current, or is it not live? And how's the information that's provided in these sort of data sources different in Developer?
Sure, actually, you've actually hit the nail on the head. A lot of information is 3 to 6 months old by the time it's accessible to the industry. And if you're looking at a rapidly changing marketplace, then that's far too dated to give you appropriate risk management. But in addition to that, the information can actually be wrong. The example that I use is the building application statistics, which you would be aware the ABS publishes every quarter. Now, that's very interesting if you're measuring pieces of paper across a desk, and to some degree it gives you some indication of confidence, but it actually doesn't measure real-time activity, because depending on which local government you're in, anywhere between 20% to 40% of applications never proceed. So therefore, if you're basing your decision to invest in a particular area on that as a key piece of data, then you're actually basing it on the wrong information.
Yeah, and so what are the ramifications of that from a practical sense as a developer?
So if you're using information that appears to show that an area is going through a boom cycle, or there's a high demand based on building application statistics, and suddenly find out that 40% of those applications have never proceeded, you may well actually be looking at a market that's nowhere near as strong as you expected it to be. And particularly for small to medium developers, that can be a problem, because their cash flow management is always very tight and can't necessarily absorb delays as the bigger players can. Delays in obviously exiting a project. But in addition to that, there's information out there, for instance, that is providing predictive changes to the form and function, and also on development fronts of local authorities. If I can give you an example, local government predicted in the early 90s that the two major supermarket chains would actually move out of the big box shopping centres into standalone supermarkets or small shopping centres with half a dozen specialties. Not a single developer, either small to medium or large, ever looked at that research. And in fact, the supermarket chains rejected it originally as well. But 7 years later, they were running around the whole east coast of Australia trying to pick up every standalone site they could find.
Yeah. Interesting. So, Bert, go ahead.
Yeah, David, if I can ask you, when I met you, you certainly came across as a person with deep knowledge and with problem-solving skills and heaps of initiative. So what is the process that you followed to sort of understand the use case scenarios for, coming with this platform? How did you go about it? Whom did you meet?
I spent about 12 months roaming all over the country, so it was great for my frequent flyer points, I can assure you. But it was a critical issue to not only speak to industry players in various jurisdictions, but also the regulatory bodies, because perceptions on either side of the equation vastly different. You'll find from that research, one of the things that came out of it was that a lot of developers perceive that there is uncertainty in the decision-making process. There's actually not, and it's completely trackable. And largely, and when I say largely, around about 93, 95% predictable. There's always the outliers of outcomes. Nothing you can do about that, but largely it's predictable. But the industry has this belief that that the decision makers are actually not predictable. So that's one of the things we found in the research. The other is that a lot of the core information that's provided for due diligence is information that that has just evolved by chance. And it doesn't necessarily reflect the information that the planning authorities use when they're actually building planning schemes. And remembering that planning schemes aren't just about land use. They're also about social outcomes, economic outcomes, and environmental outcomes.
Sure. If I can just extend the question and pass a bit of link here.
I can still hear you, Sivo.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, cool. So if I can just continue and ask you the question. So one, as a small developer, we come across the predictability of decision. And second is the enormous amount of time taken to take the decision. We sometimes have a comment that you can only hope and pray once you lodge an application in the council.
Yes.
How does the platform resolve some of those issues?
So one of the key things if you're looking for speed in an application is to make sure that you've got everything that may be required. One of the things that our platform does is it tracks not just the application decision-making process, but also the conditions of approval. And the conditions of approval give you the ability to start predicting what councils will require for any particular application. And predictability is the great thing about predictability with these things is everything's recorded. Absolutely everything is recorded. You just need to know where to look for it. And that goes for council officer decisions as well as councillors' decisions. So that's one of the places that we go to in terms of providing certainty to the small to medium developers. The other is allowing them to choose the depth of information that they want. So if it's, for instance, a mum and dad developer doing a duplex, they're not going to require anywhere near the depth of information that someone might require if they're doing a 50-lot subdivision or a small shopping centre. So in conjunction with their consultants, the development team, which includes the developer, is able to choose the depth of information that they need or require to actually lodge an application and have the best chance of success without significant imposition on changes or delays.
So can I just pipe in here? Where does the use of developer come in terms of the, I think we've lost Sibo, in the development pipeline?
It actually comes into the whole of the acquisition and development application process. So there's actually no project management platform specifically designed for the development application process, and that's what we've designed this for. So the things like statutory timeframes, statutory responses, etc. That's all preloaded for you as a user. But it's the due diligence process that we take particular pride in, because instead of just relying on those traditional information sources, we provide this extra information and more I guess, more in-depth and broader information should you choose to use it. You can make decisions on the acquisition far quicker. And then when you're actually in the development application process, you can create that application a lot quicker as well. And you can observe your team in action, creating the application in real time.
Yeah. And so would you describe it more as is it a research tool? Is it a project management tool? Or is it something?
It's actually both. It's actually both. And the interesting thing about this is the more that people use it, the more data that it collects for the system, and there is therefore able to provide more intuitive guidance to the users. It's significantly in advance anyway because of the fixed data points that we use. But because of the intuitive capability of the system and the way that we collect data and repackage it, the more that people use it, the more benefit they get out of it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the research side of things. Can people use it to determine the type of product that they're developing? And I'm talking about, whether they're developing a 3-bedroom townhouse or a 5-bedroom luxury home. Is that how you use the data from that?
Yes, you can. And in fact, our next iteration that we're planning will actually give you guidance on alternative land uses. So for instance, if you've bought a site or contracted to a site where you can do a 6-pack of units, the system might provide you information that says, well, look, there's 40 6-packs within a 2-kilometre radius. The market seems to be a bit crowded. However, there is a shortage in these alternative land uses that are acceptable under the planning scheme. Now, those alternative land uses might be anything from a childcare centre through to a retail outlet or an alternative residential form. But we think that that's particularly important, particularly for small to medium investors, where they don't have the resources of the large ASX listed companies to do that sort of market gap analysis.
Yes.
And the next iteration will actually provide that market gap analysis for them.
Okay, and you mentioned about the depth of the research. Talk to us about some of the research points and the filters. I guess are you talking about filters? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. You will definitely be able to filter it because in reality, the majority of people that'll be listening to this will be residential developers. But let's talk about someone who wants to build a small local shop, half a dozen shops for convenience shopping. They don't want information that an organisation like Westfield would rely on because it's clearly not relevant. What they're looking for is information that is relevant to the walkable neighbourhood or the 5 to 10 minute drive time to them. And that information needs to be relevant to their product. It's pointless providing them with reams of data that simply goes to waste. So we will be trying to tailor those data packages to the individual land use and the individual investor profile.
Yeah. And then they've been able to sort of go, all right, I'm just going through sort of the development journey here. You're using it for research, and is there an ability to run feasibilities as well, or?
Yes, there is. So we will have 2 components: high-level feasibility. So that's for your initial fly over the target, just to see if a site meets your key criteria. Once again, this is next iteration, but the next iteration will have what we're calling enterprise feasibility, and that will integrate with the accounting packages. So that any financial decision you make within in the platform is immediately translated into your budgets in your financial accounting package as well.
Fantastic, extremely helpful. That one is, and
absolutely
the spreadsheets, the Excel spreadsheets, And then tell us in terms of project management. I mean, the planning side of things. I mean, I don't know of any particular software that's guiding you through that sort of the lodgement process. Obviously, in terms of all the documents and all the reports that you've got to pull together to lodge your DA. Is this what this is meant to provide a solution for as well?
That's right. There's plenty of software out there and has been for some time for project managing construction. You know, there's tons of it. But there's actually nothing anywhere in the world, actually, that's been designed specifically for the DA. And the DA side of it is the most heavily regulated component of the process. It's also the part that people really do stumble on, particularly smaller players in the market, because they don't have that depth of financial resources to cater for errors or misjudgments on design outcomes. So it really is focused on the small to medium enterprises. Look, we'll be very happy if one of the ASX listed developers come along and say, we'd like to use your platform. That's fantastic. But that's not who we've designed this for. It's the people out there, the mum and dads that are using their self-managed super funds or their savings. And our job, as we see it, is to make that much easier for them, but also to help them manage their risk and therefore protect their investment as much as we can. Now, we can't protect people from making bad choices, but we can provide them as much information as possible to avoid making bad choices.
And the tools to be able to guide them through, because I know I've created my own sort of task management through that DA process, but not everyone has the tools or the ability or the time to really put things like that together. All the knowledge to necessarily go, okay, what happens next? What are all, how am I keeping track of all my consultants and reports? In that regard.
So the project file that's established in the platform for your project contains all of that information. It's a communications tool, so the team can communicate within the platform as well. There's been examples, and I've seen this over decades, where a consultant might advise their client that they've actually communicated with council or a state government agency, and they actually haven't. They actually haven't done it, and they're trying to shift the blame for not performing properly onto the regulatory agency. They can't do that with this platform. There is nowhere to hide. So from an investor's point of view, you get to see that your team is operating efficiently. And from the consulting side, the consultants actually get the chance to manage their practice a lot better. They can see what their team is doing in real time, so that they can operate more efficiently as well, which I know that the professionals out there take great pride in that. The consultants are not allowed to be on the platform to secure work, because it is a marketplace as well, where developers can source consultants. Consultants are not allowed to be on the platform unless they can show not only their qualifications, but their insurance and their professional memberships. So they're pre-qualified before they're even allowed to be on the platform.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh my goodness. So you've got a research tool, project management tool, a marketplace as well. What else?
Well,
it's like one of those ads, you want the knives with that.
Yeah, the free set of steak knives, absolutely. Well, the free set of steak knives, I guess in this instance, comes in about 18 months' time, and it will have a town planning decision database that'll be the first of its kind in the country. Unfortunately, I can't tell you much more than that because it's commercial in confidence, but it will be the first of its kind. And for your consulting team, if you're a developer, will be of particular use to them, because they will be able to identify particular trends within individual local governments.
Yeah, fantastic. So, David, what's the timeline for the rollout of actually being able to use use the tool?
So we're taking expressions of interest now. We've focused to date on southeast Queensland as our, naturally that's my base. But the great thing about the platforms, and we've got a number of other platforms in our stable. All of our platforms can work in any jurisdiction, which is ideal. So we are intending to roll out into New South Wales and Victoria over the next 12 months, and be fully functional in all of those areas. Obviously, people in other states would be interested in when it'll be available then, but that's about 18 months for full national rollout. We're taking this particularly carefully. For a very simple reason, it's all about customer service. One developer might bring on anywhere between 5 and 11, 15 consultants. So we have to make sure that we're able to onboard that scaling appropriately, and that people have the appropriate level of customer service. So we're not just going willy-nilly and letting it be available in every jurisdiction at the same time.
Yeah, it's a staged approach, because obviously, if you mentioned, particularly with the consultants, there's a qualification process.
That's exactly right. And it's also access to the data, because the data points that we're tapping into in each local authority as we roll out are significant, very significant. And of course, these are data sets that haven't been used by anyone else before, so the APIs have to be set up as we expand. But we've identified most of those over the last 2 or 3 years as we've been creating the platform. But you just never know what sort of customer requests you get. One of the things that we have factored in is that we want to be responsive to client needs. And if we all of a sudden get notified by a user that there's a particular data set that we hadn't thought of, or a particular set of information that they would find interesting, if it's at all possible, we want to make that available as quickly as possible.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, there's going to be, particularly in the first 6 months, a lot of things when people are actually using it and using it in live situations. I think that's the best time to be able to go, all right, getting that level of feedback on how to improve on things as well.
Absolutely, and it's interesting you should say that, Cheryl, because when we were doing our consultation with the industry, we started talking to people who are involved in various land uses, and something that never occurred to me, years of writing planning schemes and doing what I've done, there's a particular industry that and it's self-storage.
Yes.
It never occurred to me that self-storage is an early economic indicator. And it was the director of a company involved in that actually highlighted that to us when we were consulting with them. So
not Bunnings or McDonald's? No,
interestingly enough. I found that quite fascinating. And it just goes to show, no matter how much of an expert you are in the property sector, someone who isn't necessarily a property expert will have some sort of information or some sort of insight into information that could be significantly useful to other people in the industry.
That really makes sense, because I guess if there's people that are moving into a particular area, more often than not, they're going to have storage close to where they're building or they're moving to. Is that?
Yeah. That's exactly right. Exactly right. And if you look at information that you'll receive on economic outcomes and economic activity, etc. And let's use COVID, because it's not just people are sick of hearing it. I can guarantee no one predicted in 2020 that the economy would do as well as it did, in spite of putting aside the government contributions, because no one predicted in that initial phase that $3 to $4 billion worth of expenditure on travel international travel would actually come back into the economy. So there's all these little things that have flow-on impacts to the property sector. And the one thing that we always need to remember is that whilst it's the development industry is one of the key pillars for economic activity, the form and function of what we build as an industry affects the economic well-being and the social and the environmental well-being of where we live. So, and the reverse occurs as well. The floods recently, we're now seeing people talking about why the hell all of these properties are in the floodplain. Well, they're in the floodplain because rivers and creeks used to be our highways. That's why they're in the floodplains, primarily anyway. But if you were to remove that section of the properties that are affected, buy them back, turn them into parklands, etc., which has been sprouted since the floods, that would actually destroy the economic viability of the townships that those properties sit in, because most of those properties are within a specific radius of the key business centres. So it's all of the people who are investing in property need to understand that there is cause and effect on everything, and that simple solutions sometimes have consequential impacts that can last for decades.
Yeah, because we're not considering all the different factors that are affecting that decision. Yeah,
which is
why it sounds like it's the clear. It's like, well, that just makes sense. Take all the houses away, no problem.
And that's why we access information that is utilised to build planning schemes, because when you're building a planning scheme, if you're doing it properly, then these are the sort of things that you consider when you're doing your foundation studies for that planning scheme or an amendment.
Fantastic. This is absolutely fascinating. I know a few people have commented here. David, Catherine on LinkedIn has said it's a very informative presentation on advice making better decisions for small and medium developers. Absolutely. And someone else on Facebook also mentioned looking forward to this product launch. So just going back, timing wise again, and how do people, I guess, subscribe to find out when the product will be launched?
Sure. So the easiest way is to email us, and quite happy for it to be my email. So that's David at developer. That's DEVELPR.online.
So David at developer. So DEVELPR. No O.
That's right. That's right. Online. And that's it. Nothing else. Nothing else.
Too easy. And time frame again, you mentioned before, but can you sort of repeat that?
So we're looking to roll out fully across the East Coast across the next 12 months. And if anyone wants information on our other platforms, then more than happy for them to raise that question as well, because we've realised that if you're going to make the industry more efficient and more effective, you actually have to address both sides of the equation, and that includes the regulatory bodies. So we've actually created platforms for them as well, and we're in the process of preparing for trials with local government on some of those. So more than happy to talk to people if they want to email me about that. Can't go into it too much, unfortunately, in this podcast because it's commercial in confidence. But yeah, we recognise that all of this data is interchangeable, and what we produce for the industry is equally as valuable for the decision makers.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, David. Unfortunately, I think we lost Subodh, but we'll have him back again in the next session. But that was a great kickoff to our very first episode of Property Tech Talk. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All the best with the whole development of things, and I know these things they don't happen overnight, but what you're creating and what you're telling us definitely has so much implications and so much value to bring to the development space, because at the moment we're just pulling things from all sorts of different places, not really sure what that means, just hoping for the best, effectively.
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, great initiative doing this. I'll be watching future episodes with interest. It's a good initiative. Well done.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you. Take care and stay safe. And everyone that's joined us today, appreciate your time. And if there's particular technology or software or platform that you want us to talk about at PropTech Talk, drop me a message, and we'll talk to people, and again, get the innovators and leaders in the space up and sharing. All good. Well, you all take care of yourselves. We'll see you again. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye then. Bye.